3.5% lower. Now they're the worst one-day falls in more than 2 years. Stocks have plunged on concerns that central banks won't be able to prevent another deep recession in both the US and Europe. Investors are avoiding anything to do with risk, and they're taking their cash to the perceived safety of the US dollar and US Treasury bonds. The Australian dollar has dived as a result, and the outlook for the Australian market this morning is just as bleak. I'm joined by business editor Peter Ryan now. Good morning, Peter. Was there any particular trigger for these steep falls on markets overnight?
Hi Michael. Look, quite simply, European markets were pretty much playing a game of catch-up with the news that had trickled out around about this time yesterday morning, that the US Federal Reserve saw significant downside risk to the US economy, and also that they were not going to be embarking on a third tranche of metaphorical money printing or quantitative easing. And so with that catch-up, as you said, markets fell around 5% across Europe, and this is really as they factor in the likelihood of a Greek default, or the US Federal Reserve's inability, or central bank's inability to avoid another Lehman Brothers style shock, although it has to be said that unlike Lehman Brothers, this shock that's about to hit Europe can be seen coming from several miles off.
And it seems there's the new key phrase used by international authority figures. It's all dangerous. It's dangerous this, it's dangerous that, which is not exactly filling investors with any sort of confidence.
That's right, and they probably need to start changing the terminology. Robert Zoellick, when he was out here a few weeks ago, the World Bank president, used the term danger zone about 5 or 6 weeks ago, but they're really running out of ways to describe the situation that the world is facing at the moment. But despite all this, money is flowing back into US Treasury bonds, as you mentioned in your introduction, and also the US dollar is also back in favour, and this is basically because there's nowhere else to go. Despite everything, despite the gloomy outlook from the US Federal Reserve, despite the decision by Standard & Poor's over a month ago to remove America's AAA credit rating, America is still in some ways strangely regarded as the world's best investment, and that's why we've seen all that money pouring out of anything to do with risk into that perceived safe haven of US Treasuries.
And Peter, I'm almost afraid to ask this final question, but what is the outlook for the local market today?
Well, it has been said increasingly that it's no longer the case that when the US sneezes, Australia gets a cold, but that's not quite the case. The Australian share market is expected to open sharply weaker. The All Ords down around 77 points. That's on top of yesterday's falls of 2.6%. Now, obviously, there's going to be a lot of interest in what happens to the Australian share market today, but when I'm finished talking with you here, I'll be heading down to the Reserve Bank headquarters for the release of the Financial Stability Review, and that will provide a snapshot as to how Australian banks are weathering this storm compared to what we've been seeing in Europe and the United States.
Busy day ahead. Business editor Peter Ryan, thank you. The most senior